Salutations all, this is Juiciest Slice, here to chat about a weird flick notorious for raising the ire of critics and fans alike. In the case of the former, because it was another and a roundly hated long-lived franchise that offered up the goods. And the latter because it dashed expectations with a twist ending that changed everything. Of course I'm talking about Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. The middle entry in what is affectionately referred to as the Tommy Jarvis trilogy. Thank you to anyone taking the time to check this out. I deeply appreciate it. So what do you get when you cross a psychologically damaged victim dealing with the after effects of their trauma with a new series of murders? In more recent years, you get the fascinating indie Last Girl Standing. Created via a Kickstarter campaign, I encourage you to check it out. It courageously goes where this film never dared. But if you look back to 1985, the year Back to the Future, the song We Are the World, and New Coke swept the US, you get Repetition, aka Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. Spoiler alert.
I'm gonna give it to you straight about Jason.
He ain't the killer this time around, but I'm guessing most everybody knows that already. That immutable fact has long gotten this entry lumped onto worst lists, but actually it's in my opinion a terrific installment. Since until the real killer is revealed it's easy to believe it's the one and only Jason, can it even be called a whodunit? It's obvious the makers were really hedging their bets after killing off Jason, and upped the kill and sleaze quotient to fill the void left by the big guy's departure. Directed by the late Danny Steinman, also known for the Linda Blair vehicle Savage Streets, a fun little exploitation that tries too hard to be profound, from a screenplay by Martin Kittrosser, David Cohen, and Steinman, and produced by Timothy Silver, the film stars the sharply cast Mathew Shepherd as hard-bitten, simmering, and volcanic Tommy Jarvis, Mouth himself, Corey Feldman, as young Tommy Jarvis, existing as a dream phantasm, dancer and actress Melanie Kinnaman.
Hi, my name is Pam Roberts. I'm the assistant director.
More a final woman than a final girl. He played Arnold's best friend Dudley on Different Strokes, Shabar Ross.
Call me Reggie the Reckless. No spider would scare me.
A guy who once got the best of Indiana Jones, Richard Young.
I'm Matthew Letter. Welcome to Pinehurst. Have a seat.
As Dr. Matt Letter, the tremendous Vernon Washington. As George Winter, Reggie's grandfather, a man with a great 1,000-yard stare, Dick Weand. As Roy Burns, our copycat Jason, he went on to appear in the classic Frankenfish. Where do they come up with these gems? Marco St. John.
No, I certainly know what it is you're trying to do, and I respect it, man, I do.
As Sheriff Tucker, versatile Carol Locatal.
Now, Sheriff, you better hear me and hear me good. I want this loony bin closed down.
As foul-mouthed Ethel Hubbard, the delightfully over-the-top Ron Sloan.
You tell Ma! I ain't so pretty myself, I know.
As the broadly played Junior Hubbard, Ethel's man-child son. I call him Catfish, Sonny Shields.
Yes, ma'am.
As Raymond, a vagabond who clearly has few options in life. More of a scream queen than I realized before making this, Juliet Cummins. As Demir Robin, a guy who also appeared in the ill-conceived Soul Man, Jerry Pavlon.
Matt's gone. To George, too.
As the nerdy but bold Jake. The acorn doesn't fall too far from the tree, veteran actress Tiffany Helm.
Can you wait?
As cute goth girl Violet, she had the perfect surname for inclusion in the series, Debbie Sue Voorhees. As vivacious Tina, he should have had more of a career, John Robert Dixon. As Lothario Eddie, spot-on Dominic Brascia. As the ill-fated Joey, a zombie once ate his brains. Mark Venturini. As the quick-to-snap Vic, he guested on one of my favorite episodes of MASH, Mulcahy's War.
He might be a dog, but he also happens to be a corporal in the United States Army.
Rick Mancini,
What the hell's going on here?
as Grumpy Mayor Cobb, star of stage and screen Anthony Barrile,
I'm telling you, Pete, this is bullshit. This really sucks.
as Greaser Vinny, prolific actor and acting teacher Corey Parker,
Just do it. Fix it, man. Those cunts aren't gonna wait all night.
as Greasier Pete, his brother-directed Hell Night, Bob DeSimone,
Anytime, doll.
as a more fun-loving Billy than I'm used to talking about, Rebecca Wood, apt name, I'm sure she inspired much wood,
Sorry, Buster, we're closed.
as sexy waitress Lana, the legendary Miguel A. Nunez,
Oh my God! Well, get your ass in here, boy!
as Demon, Reggie's really cool big brother, gorgeous Jerry Fields,
Hey, calm down, dude.
as Demon's even cooler lady Anita, and finally, the cast didn't know they were in a Friday the 13th flick until he walked by in full costume, Tom Morga, as Jason Voorhees. Woo, quite a roster. Methinks we're in for an impressive body count.
Looks like we got us a maniac on the loose, huh, Sheriff?
Let's get this show on a roll.
Revealing right away that Jason remains firmly at the surface of this poor young man's mind, Tommy Jarvis dreams that his younger self spies a couple of knuckleheads digging up the maniac's shallow grave. Not the requisite 6 feet under. Jason's coffin is right there, and upon being exposed to air, Jason springs to life and murders those who dared disturb his slumber. Of course he then climbs out of the grave. Only to approach, loom over, and attack the terrified boy. Before Tommy snaps awake in the present. I want to put to rest the notion this movie lacks the real Jason, because the Jason Tommy sees is the real Jason. Whether he has a physical presence or not is moot. He is very real. I don't think these phantasms are completely psychological either, but I'll get to that later.
Yes, yes.
En route to the Pinehurst halfway house. Following years of commitment in the aftermath of the events of the final chapter, Tommy is greeted with open arms by Pinehurst man in charge, Dr. Matt Letter.
You'll find we're very different from the state institution. We don't have any guards here. Nobody's going to tell you what you can do or what you can't do. Basically, you're your own boss.
And his stalwart assistant, Pam.
It's an honor system, Tommy.
But is laconic, barely uttering a word.
Sure.
They discuss his case.
Boy, they've given him every treatment, every therapy they can think of. It's a wonder his mind isn't fried with all the drugs they've given him.
Revealing Tommy has been dealt with more than treated, leaving him the detached and broken shell of a person delivered to their door. I think there is a reason for this poor treatment I will get to later.
That's not good enough.
Tommy goes to his room and is greeted by a jump scare. A prank by this lovably incorrigible young man.
You scared of spiders?
Reggie the Reckless has long been my favorite character in this film, followed by his brother Demon. The kid is charismatic and full of beans, funny and brave and a joy to watch. He lights up the screen. Tommy gets him back with one of his homemade masks. A step down in quality perhaps from his work in the previous film. Explained by inability to acquire better materials while institutionalized, but still good enough to elicit a scare. Sheriff Tucker drops off horn dogs Eddie and Tina.
But, well, you see, we found a couple of your kids on the Hubbard place again.
Everybody out.
Cut out the fooling around. Follow in by the sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Caught fornicating for the 1,000th time on the neighbor's property because Bunny's going to bunny. The residents of said property, the kind of redneck backwoods yokels that give country folk a bad name, Ethel and her dim-witted son Junior, arrived to raise a ruckus.
These kids weren't doing.
Doing? You think I don't know what those two perverts were doing in my yard?
Say it like you mean it, Ma.
Leading Matt to forbid the group from leaving the premises after Ethel threatens to blow up everybody.
You come near me, Sheriff, I warn you. I got a bomb on me. I swear to you. You make one move toward me, I'm gonna blow us all up.
Even though Ethel comes off quite badly, I sort of think she has a point and a right to privacy, even if her approach is wackadoodle. I don't know about you, but I personally wouldn't want to come across people stooping on my property. Soon Joey is wandering around looking for attention.
Hi, girls.
Hi, Joey.
Hi, Violet.
Huh?
To which Robin and Violet are, go figure, not receptive.
Piss off.
Oh, please let me help you. It's really no problem.
Joey!
Vic is obviously a stable guy.
Leave me alone.
Not at all hearkening back to films like Don't Look in the Basement and Alone in the Dark 1982.
Use the axe, Judge. Listen to me, Judge. Use the axe.
I need a match.
A match? Oh, sure. Just keep the pack.
In which clearly unstable patients are trusted with items they can use to damaging effect.
You're a professional. I won't allow you to do it.
Put it down, Judge!
Joey approaching a live wire like Vic reveals a young man incapable of reading social cues. A character criticized for his childlike depiction, making him almost a caricature. I mean, he has chocolate smears in the corners of his mouth, for Christ's sake, something most often reserved for grade schoolers. I think it reflects that being in the system stunted him, and he acts the way he does because it's the intellectual level where he is trapped. This is in no way a criticism of him, but the circumstances that, following his abandonment, denied him the opportunity to grow up mentally and emotionally. Vic also reflects a rough journey through the system, an angry young man quick to violence without regard for throwing away his entire life. Joey's pestering is certainly annoying.
Well, if that's the way you feel, forget it, Vic. Just forget it. But I think you're really out of line.
But he isn't worth a life sentence. Yet in front of a bevy of witnesses, Vic goes chop crazy. But then there could be more to it than that. These events rattle everyone, but most of all Tommy. Once again subjected to being in the proximity of murder, and Roy confronted by the death of the child he had forsaken. The unassuming paramedic sees the bloody result of his illegitimate son's brutal murder and breaks. Internalizing all his regret and guilt, and in so doing manifests an alter ego, in the process perhaps inviting some force of vengeance into his very being. More on that later.
I don't care.
That night the murders begin in earnest. Pete and Vinny have the bad luck of breaking down in the middle of nowhere on their way to a double date. Vinny is forced to eat a road flare. And Pete returns from responding to nature's call, only to get a surprise blade across the gullet.
Let's go!
The following night, the budding slasher goes about perfecting his axe play. Billy roars up to snag Lana at the end of her shift. While she closes up shop and gets ready, Billy enjoys some party favors.
And the forecast is cloudy in the mountains, sunny in the valleys, and snow flurries up your nose.
Only to wind up succumbing to a little too much on his mind.
Hey!
Unless you're a total baller, no coke is spilled frivolously, and on a state salary, I doubt Billy would want to lose even a granular. So Lana being so calm upon seeing this,
You're gonna waste a lot of money this way, smarty.
Makes me think she had little grasp of the situation and maybe should have been a little more alarmed. I shouldn't be too hard on her though, since Roy had no qualms forcing her to stomach the observational failure that cost her any chance of escape. Breakfast at Pinehurst is a little tense the morning after Joey's murder.
You don't set a place for a dead person.
I said I was sorry.
Joker Eddie tries to lighten the mood. Upon seeing his fright mask so callously used in the commission of a fright, Tommy has no chill and erupts. Matt is forced to get physical to restore peace. Later, the horny young lovers Tina and Eddie having recovered from his trouncing, in defiance of Matt, God, but mostly Ethel, go off into the woods again for a little of the old in and out. Raymond, a transient willing to shovel out a whole chicken coop for a plate of food he never gets, foolishly spies on the entangled couple, only to wind up punished for his perviness, getting instead of a hot meal a gut full of cold steel. Since Ethel stirs her stew with her bare hands in about the filthiest house you can imagine, probably the healthier option, as food poisoning wouldn't be as merciful of a death. Since Tina had an eye for life and for love, down in the dumps Roy couldn't have that, and Tina falls victim to a vicious death that horrified Cyclops everywhere.
Oh, Lord.
Eddie returns after cleaning up, only to discover his lady love's blindingly brutal demise. And winds up backing into this entry's most goofed up murder. As continuity gets thrown out the window. Sheesh, it's as bad as the pitchfork in part 3. Or Jason's remaining eye switching sides in Jason Takes Manhattan. Meanwhile, Reggie convinces his grandfather to let him visit his awesome big brother, in the area temporarily. Decades before YouTube would popularize van life, Demon and his girlfriend Anita are living the dream, roaming the world in their van. I always thought Demon was a fantastic brother, kind and caring, and generous too.
Yeah, have an enchilada.
Giving his little brother a great memory.
I tell you what, why don't you take this?
Hey, man, this is bad.
Nothing is too good for my little brother.
Especially considering what happens. While Reggie's visiting.
Hey, Pam. Yo, Pam, come here, baby, come here. This is my friend Pam.
Hi.
She's my girlfriend.
Precocious little scamp. Tommy has a sudden encounter with the Boris Jr. Hubbard. Something just ain't right about Junior. Without a thought to possible consequences, he proceeds to badger Tommy.
Crazy from the loony bin!
For no good reason.
Oh, my mama's gonna chop you up into itty bitty pieces, my friend!
All the prodding leads to Tommy exploding again. Pam snaps him out of it. Tommy! Only for the confused young man to abscond hastily. Horrified at the violence he wrought. To me, Tommy is no way at fault. Junior hassled someone for having mental problems and yet was surprised when he got his rump served to him sautéed with a side of loaded mashed potatoes and steamed asparagus? I think it's safe to say Ethel didn't read to him when he was little and lead paint chips were part of his diet. Hit with some major enchilada shits, Demon hurries to an outhouse. And that's where this film gets even weirder. Actually, this one kinda has an escalation of weird throughout. But this is a good sequence to point to. if for nothing more than the inclusion once again of an outhouse in the Friday series.
Heavy shit.
Maybe it isn't for me to speculate, but Martin Kittrosser might have a fetish. Anita messes with Demon playfully.
Stop it!
Leading to an exchange of flirtatious singing.
Ooh, baby. Hey, baby. Hey, baby.
Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby.
A sign of true love right there, but an odd tick all the same. This interlude precedes Anita getting the worst critique of her singing ever when off-screen Roy slices her vocal cords. After the fright of his life, Demon learns what it's like to be the gigged frog. After his humiliating encounter with Tommy, Junior rides around on his motorcycle in a total tizzy. In the process, absolutely losing his head. Ethel hears him carrying on and reacts with her usual kind nature and patience.
I'm making your dinner!
Her good grace.
You dumb!
Leading to her getting it right in the mug. Unable to locate Tommy, Pam leaves Reggie with Robin and Jake while she searches for him. After the kid zonks out, Jake makes an awkward pass at Robin.
Oh, look behind.
I want to make love with you.
And she reacts exactly how I would expect.
You can actually pinpoint the second when his heart rips in half.
I said I didn't mean it.
Which she later regrets. I saw this as a kid and I've always wondered if she regretted hurting Jake because he was a harmless nice guy, or if she regretted not going to bed with him. She could have done worse and a little aggressive snuggling would have at least earned the brutal kill. Each received. Violet rocks out on her own. Far too into her groove and avant-garde dance moves to notice a massive killer sneaking up before falling into his grasps. Pam returns without Tommy and discovers Reggie is the only one around. Reggie makes a horrifying discovery.
Tommy's room!
Kind to the coroner, Roy thoughtfully gathered and stacked up the accumulating bodies in Tommy's room. Pam and Reggie attempt to flee. Roy, bursts in for the first time on screen, and it was worth the build-up as he appears to be every bit the violent force of nature we're used to. Pam and Reggie make a wet, soggy run for it into the kind of rip-snorter lightning storm these films were known for at the time. They dash through the woods, coming upon Roy killing the other paramedic. At which point Reggie reaches his apex of fear and gives this film's best scream. And proving adrenaline is the best stimulant, zips away as if in fast motion, leaving Pam in his wake. Unable to keep up, she tries to find him, only to discover Matt impaled on a tree like a catfish primed for skinning. He goes back to the house in hopes of reconnecting with Reggie. Another staple up to this point in the series, Grandpa George's corpse crashes through the window like the errant ball of a rambunctious child. Sending Pam back out into the storm screaming, Roy in hot pursuit. You have to give it to the guy. Through ruthless efficiency, Roy keeps a busy schedule, giving the real Jason a run for his money in regard to maintaining a tight time frame. It's really no wonder Roy catches up to Pam and closes in. Even though he's a terrified kid trying his damnedest to escape, Reggie comes to the rescue in the coolest way possible. Roy takes a tremendous hit and gets propelled through the air. But even with his guts rearranged, manages to shake it off in time for the final showdown. Pursuing them into the barn, Roy finds his quarry has scurried out of sight and is drawn to where gutsy Pam lies in wait with a chainsaw. The instant he opens the door, she springs out to duel with him. Almost getting the better of him before the chainsaw sputters out. Showing his ultimate resolve and overall courage, Tommy appears to confront who he believes to be Jason. Only to fall short of the success of his younger counterpart. But does manage to do some damage with his handy pocket knife. The trio scampers into the loft, and bloodied Roy continues to pursue. Tommy plays dead as effectively as a hog-nosed snake. And Roy continues to hunt the others until Reggie accidentally draws his attention. The killer hovers in menacingly and demonstrates his growing impatience. Pam again jumps into action, drawing him away so that Reggie can bounce him out of the loft. Of course, he's hanging on for one final scare, and seizes Reggie's ankle. Tommy saves the day. Sending him plummeting down, where he's impaled on a tractor harrow. And finally unmasked. Sheriff Tucker offers up the coda.
The kid who was axed to death at the woodpile was Roy's son. God only knows why Roy kept it hidden all these years.
Explaining the twist in case anyone was left thoroughly confused.
I guess he used the Jason thing to cover up with.
Another tragic misstep. The film ends on a shocking cliffhanger that, if given any logical thought, could really only exist as a dream sequence. In the hospital, Tommy envisions Jason again, only for the figure to fade and disappear. Is this Tommy overcoming his fear? The ill-advised intent of the film was to convey that he was taking on Jason's mantle, that he would be the killer going forward. A window is broken in Tommy's room and Pam charges in. Tommy hides behind the door, having donned Roy's hockey mask, like the police would just hand it over to him, and brandishing a kitchen knife that's conveniently on hand. In a hospital room, mind you. And the screen goes black with him seemingly on the verge of turning Pam inside out. Since Tommy was restored to purely good guy status in Jason Lives, concluding this was another dream explains away the total unreality of the entire scenario. What it does establish, though, is how Tommy is still haunted by his trauma, stoking the surface obsession that would lead him to unearthing Jason in the next film.
Seeing his corpse ain't gonna stop the hallucinations. Seeing it won't, but destroying it will. Jason belongs in hell. I'm gonna see he gets there.
So, what is A New Beginning maybe getting at besides offering up a slice and dice thrill ride? Longtime haters of the series, critics came out swinging. You can tell they were uninterested in getting into a game of Rochambeau with Paramount, because though their critical beatdown would deter the pious, sheltered, and other more discerning viewers, they used a lot of terminology that would entice many horror fans, such as Scott Meslow of GQ calling it the bloodiest, most deranged entry in the franchise, or Leonard Maltin concluding it was as gruesome and disgusting as ever. But even if it was an unremitting murder fest loaded with gory kills and lots of breasts, once the twist was revealed, no one was having it, not even the fans. And this film, despite being a box office success, was roundly rejected, and it sadly became the franchise pariah for years. I wonder what the audience would have thought had it been Jason, and no explanation was given for his return. Maybe the problem was that Roy should have been Pamela Voorhees' brother or nephew, something that lent credibility to him being the heir to Jason's legacy. As copycats go, he doesn't besmirch the legacy of the coattails on which he rode, measuring up in many ways. To me, Roy represents abandonment, regret, and the past come back to haunt the present, so a personification of the film's themes. Many have questioned how Roy as an imitator could be such an unrelenting badass. Story-wise, for the ruse to work, he had to appear to be the real deal to compete. But I think there's more to it than that. The real reason I believe Roy had Voorhees' swagger was that the whole Crystal Lake and adjoining area is infused with a pervasive evil, or what is perceived as an evil for how it acts out. But it may be something more along the lines of the leftovers of an old vengeance curse, something I may at some point explore in a theory video.
Yes.
I believe when Roy donned the mask, he was imbued with a milder version of whatever mythical power that granted Jason a healing factor along with uncanny abilities like teleportation. But how? Perhaps it lies in a desire for revenge. Mrs. Voorhees wanted revenge and used the Necronomicon to resurrect Jason, and who knows what else. The book seems to harness the ancient forces of a given area. I don't believe she summoned Deadite specifically, but perhaps something else. Who's to say what she awoke, or maybe just attracted? Whatever it was, following his encounter with Jason, it haunted Tommy, and perhaps had influence over those around the angsty young man, such as over the actions of an angry fellow like Vic, who is easy to manipulate into violence, giving Tommy a dose of the kind of ultra-violence usually restricted to his mind, trying to drive an even greater wedge in his sanity, to push him into breaking completely. The powers likely either wanted to claim Tommy using Roy, or just force him to once again commit murder by stopping Roy, so he would be driven to himself have a taste for bloodletting, and become the killer, getting him back for killing Jason by despoiling his very soul. When it failed to control him because Tommy ultimately overcame the darkness, it instead needled him to dig up Jason's body through continued hallucinations, leading to the main man's revivification via lightning bolt. No matter what, it wouldn't leave him alone, likely ongoing punishment for putting Jason's body out of commission and not bowing under the pressure to take his place. Roy's motives are obviously spurious and questionable. Why kill any of the others around Pinehurst? Well, Junior and Ethel probably participated in enough rude encounters around town to have courted disaster. But why kill the group at Pinehurst? A bunch of young people who'd already gotten a short shrift in life. Because they were unable to protect Joey from Vic? Quite frankly, they're lucky Vic only killed Joey. Had he been so inclined, he could have gone on quite an extravaganza before police could intervene. This confirms to me that the otherworldly force used him as a pawn, able to carry out a single butchering but not able to commit a spree, to specifically kill Joey as a means of setting off Roy. Why? Because there was something in the stolid and introverted paramedic's psychology twisted enough he would reject all reason, meaning his victim pool was limitless, like Jason following the spree of Part 2. Wasn't Vic really the one he should want, the actual killer of his son? But Vic goes off to stand trial and a bunch of veritable innocents are slaughtered instead. I believe this is because that outcome serves the powers pressing him to kill. Let me ask this. Why did Pamela Voorhees kill all the camp counselors when she could have shut down the camp by killing Steve Christie alone? They certainly weren't responsible for Jason's drowning, and without Christie spearheading, no one was chomping at the bit to get the camp operating again. Like Roy after her, the Powers utilized her crazy desire for revenge to deal out death especially unreasonably, since the majority of her victims were innocent of personal responsibility, much like almost all the victims in the series. Roy at the end of the day regretted not being there to save Joey the same way Pamela regretted failing to save Jason, and their insane responses were mirrored in each other in their murderous responses to grief.
Jason should have been watched every minute.
Tommy emerges as the consummate victim, first of a berserk madman, then of a deplorable system intent on keeping him unwell, and finally of another berserk madman. Tommy is treated like a harbinger of bad luck, like he's bad luck himself, but it only serves to make him more sympathetic, which is why I believe the film failed to transfer Tommy into the position of killer in the minds of the audience. John Shepherd himself comes across as way too sympathetic. The amount of preparation he undertook, including spending time around the mentally ill, before learning he was in a schlocky horror sequel not even good enough to care about continuity, was a cruel trick on him, but in turn his sensitive performance was a cruel trick on a production hoping the film would be a springboard into a new trilogy, with Tommy as the killer. The character is damaged, afraid, nerve, quick to resort to violence as a means of self-protection, but it seems throughout the film, what he's fighting is the memory of Jason haunting him, which I take to mean the trauma Jason caused, not homicidal urges. Honestly, Mark Venturini might have been the better choice to build a killer Tommy.
I hate it.
Because that guy smoldered with rage and could clearly play a heavy.
Well, you can have it.
Drugged and denied validation for his heroism, a near mute, Tommy drifts through the world in a gloomy and lonely haze, except when challenged in any way, rubbing salt in unhealed wounds, when to his deep regret the lava flows, and this unstable state seems to be by design, to keep him compliant and destroy his credibility. I conclude officialdom did their best to cover up what happened, and that included corralling Tommy, likely using child anonymity laws to keep his and Trish's identities hidden as long as possible. It would behoove those at every level of local government to put a lid on the whole thing, or else the kid would have received such an outpouring of positive attention he would have had a much greater chance to mentally recuperate. Why would they do that to Tommy? I posit he was sacrificed to cover up negligence and absolve Crystal Lake law enforcement of legal liability. Allowing a mass killer an opportunity to escape could have led to a fleet of civil lawsuits, so they had to do their best to keep it hush-hush, or at least muddy the facts. Anyone who knows the system knows it's more about plausible deniability and wiggle room than right or wrong, guilty or not guilty. In supplemental materials, Crystal Lake law enforcement tries to deny it was even necessarily Jason who Tommy killed. Mayor Cobb refuses to consider the murders could have anything at all to do with Jason because he has a vested interest in the area's already sullied reputation not taking another beating. Murders are bad enough. The continuation of Jason's spree far worse, because it drums up interest in what could be a PR nightmare. Better to sweep Jason under the rug, much like Crystal Lake did by changing the town's name to Forest Green, and within a short span obscuring if Jason even existed or was only a campfire legend. I think that without political interference, Tommy would have been lauded a hero, gone through a period of fame, and maybe even been one of Oprah's earliest guests. Tommy was obviously starved of positive attention. What he needed was a huge hug and validation.
It's not your fault.
He needed to be told that no matter how traumatizing it was, what he did was right and born of necessity, but it didn't define him as a person. Instead, he was swaddled in the blanketing label of mental illness, then smothered, and never allowed to throw it off, because it served higher authorities to keep him in a state in which he was easy to undermine, discredit, and suffocate. Instead of getting the care he needed, he was disenfranchised from his sister. I have to conclude Trish was dealt with, maybe told in no uncertain terms to bugger off, and family. He did have a father after all, even if an absent one. He was also treated like an irredeemable mental case, without a shred of hope he would ever be able to shuck the emotional stigma of the past. I think this could be construed as commentary about how the individual is always expendable to whatever is the need of the higher authority, who happens to be in charge, even if the individual is an innocent victim, in this case a child subsumed into the system, and ground down mentally and emotionally until he was a basket case. Not that kind of basket case, although Belial springing out would be a good analogy for Tommy's repressed emotions bursting free. In the aftermath of a heroic if traumatizing act, instead of being offered deserved support, he was treated like a criminal and drugged to the gills for what was clearly an act of self-defense. Is it any wonder Tommy can't help but to surrender to his negative feelings?
Sure.
In final analysis, this film boils down to an unfortunate young man in Tommy Jarvis, who represents the martyr, the forgotten son, the hanged man, the sacrificial lamb, and the cursed loner, all rolled into one, not being able to overcome the trauma that plagues his life. Another film that, whether or not by design, takes a swipe at institutions, in some way it's an outright condemnation of bureaucracy and legislative forces, conspiring to maintain the status quo even over the needs of children. Perhaps commentary on how forward-thinking, read liberal, social programs like that being run at Pinehurst are undermined by an underfunded social services system that through the disregard of public officials fails kids who have fallen into the cracks of society. This film might also have something to say about the chain of evil, how one horrific set of acts can beget another, ad infinitum. This is played out in modern society as the prevalence of mass and other shootings in public venues has, at least in the US, risen meteorically. When a 6-year-old takes a gun to school and shoots his teacher, there's a deep abscess in the culture. But I doubt any such messaging, or any messaging at all, was truly the intent. For all I know, the whole thing was merely an exercise in getting a man in an outhouse singing a romantic duet with his woman. Because this is a Friday the 13th. And Friday the 13th films are ruder, cruder, crasser, brassier, and just plain wilder than the competition. Is this flick worth a watch? As an example of a surprisingly strong fifth entry in an unkillable horror franchise, though legal actions have sure tied it up a bit. That's appropriate, but how the hell did a clip from that one wind up in this? I blame a conspiracy to force me into the modern age. Anyhow, it's essential viewing. I still think the production must have figured if they didn't have Jason, they had to go overboard on kills and sex, because this entry is so stuffed with murder set pieces and bared breasts, it's a little astonishing. Honestly, what were the odds the audience was going to accept a counterfeit Jason?
Slim to none.
Yet the runaway success of the final chapter made it so Paramount was like,
I like those odds.
and the fans were on board until the reveal, at which time there was a collective,
Wait, this isn't a barrel. It's just a stinking cask. I want my money back!
I appreciate the attempt because this is a unique film that may not have been a bridge beyond Jason, but created enough interest to reanimate Jason at any cost to believability, which gave us superpowered undead Jason, and for that I am grateful. Make sure to check out Movie Timelines in your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete. They have lots of terrific Friday the 13th content. Well, I think I've reached the end of the rope, so I won't leave you dangling. If you've made it this far, thanks for hearing out my ramblings. Please share any refutations, opinions, accusations, japes, or other ideas in the comments below. And please join me next time when I explore love triangles, deep pits, and a killer who steals hearts in 1981's cult favorite, My Bloody Valentine. And just remember, if Jason still haunts you, you're not alone. Bye now.
Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.